Our protagonist, a spider monster reborn into the great Elroe Labyrinth for reasons she has long since given up trying to understand, has had it. The food is abysmal, catastrophically, insultingly abysmal. The only things on the menu are other monsters, and every single one of them is horrendously poisonous. Who approved this menu? Management needs a serious talking to. The Middle Stratum had briefly given her hope. Catfish, eels, genuinely edible by the rock-bottom standards of underground dungeon cuisine. And then there was the wyrm, an evolved form of those same creatures. Surely that meant a taste upgrade. After the battle of her life, after her body-brain put in the considerable labor of descaling the thing, flavorless white fish, the kind that would have been genuinely excellent if there were any possible way to season it. The moment that thought crossed her mind, it was over. I want to go outside and eat a proper meal. And thus began Operation Escape the Dungeon and Find Actual Food. The plan was simple, in the way that climb Everest in flip-flops is simple. She needed to go from the Middle Stratum to the Upper Stratum. She'd been born in the Upper Stratum, fallen into the nightmare zone of the Lower Stratum, clawed her way out, and landed here in this fiery hellhole. Logistically, she just needed to go up. She hoped spatial magic would eventually let her teleport out entirely, but given her luck stat, she wasn't betting on it. Her memoir would be titled, How to Get Lost in Every Layer of the Same Dungeon. Even if she escaped, there was the small matter of being a spider monster. Rolling into a human town looking for a restaurant would not go well. She'd considered evolving into an arachne, humanoid upper half, fractionally less terrifying, or acquiring telepathy to explain herself to panicked humans. The language barrier was another wrinkle. The divine voice spoke Japanese, but that didn't mean anyone else in this world would, because the universe enjoys making everything worse. Also, she was terrible at talking to people. She'd been a loner by choice in her previous life. It's true, she wasn't lying. Her stats, at least, were impressive. Magical abilities that had grown to potentially rival the Earth Dragon Araba back in the Lower Stratum. Managing everything with parallel minds. Hey, I heard that. Information brain. Oh, hush. Was nothing short of miraculous given how many skills she'd accumulated. Physical stats still regrettably low, but she'd defeated a wyrm, one step from a dragon. She was allowed a little confidence. Maybe she'd eventually get revenge on Araba. On second thought, absolutely not. Earth dragons are genuinely terrifying. Moving on. Far from the labyrinth, in a world with slightly less magma, a young prince named Schlein was summoned home. His teacher had wasted no time informing his father that he'd inherited the hero title. Schlein returned to the royal castle, his first time home in ages, in no mental state to appreciate the homecoming. His father met him in his private office, documents covering every surface. When Schlein entered, his father's voice carried a weight it had never held before. First, please allow me to have you appraised to confirm you have the hero title. The appraisal stone sent that unpleasant sensation through his body, like being licked all over by an invisible entity. The result was positive. His father covered his face with his hands. Julius. Just the name. Schlein's vision blurred immediately. He was attempting to hold himself together when a hand settled on his shoulder. Leston, the third prince, the brother he'd always been closest to after Julius, pulling him into a gentle hug and stroking his hair. That was it. He clung to Leston and sobbed like a child, because he essentially was one, and no title was going to change that. After a suitable period of shared grief, Silas, the eldest prince, perennially sour-faced, never laughing, the only sibling Schlein had never felt attachment to, spoke up to get things moving. Before we are individuals, we are royalty. We must think of the future. Nobody could find a flaw in this, as much as everyone wanted to. Schlein's father wiped his tears with his sleeve. His eyes were red and swollen from crying, yet filled with a light so powerful that Schlein thought, is this what it means to be a king? Because it's remarkable. I definitely could not do that. His father laid out the situation. Julius's death wasn't confirmed, but a hero title only transferred upon its holder's death, so they all knew what that meant. The demon army had begun its invasion. Several fortresses had fallen, including the crucial Fort Kusorion, apparently destroyed by a summoned monster, or the largest spell anyone had ever seen. Naturally. Why do anything small? The demon army had since withdrawn, but the damage was done. Julius's death and Schleyn's new title were to remain secret until the dust settled. Schleyn would leave school immediately and remain ready to announce himself as the new hero at any moment, because that was the kind of Tuesday this was. In a quiet corridor, Schleyn's teacher spoke in hushed tones with Leston. "Something suspicious seems to be going on. I've reported to Master Potamus. In the worst-case scenario, we may need to have the elves shelter Shun." "I don't want to lose another brother after Julius," Leston said. "Whatever keeps him alive, even if it means I can never see him again." "Very well, we'll do our best. I'm counting on you." Back in the labyrinth, where things were also not going well. Several days of Middle Stratum exploration had produced 0 monster encounters. Not because the monsters were absent, they were everywhere. They were just fleeing in absolute terror the moment they caught sight of her. She had become, unintentionally, the most lonely apex predator in the dungeon. The culprit, the Fearbringer title, earned in the fireworm battle. The title applied a fear effect to everything within her line of sight. Additionally, the intimidation skill carried the same effect. She could switch intimidation off. She could not turn off the title. She could not turn off being Fearbringer, which meant no food, no experience points, and a slowly dwindling red stamina gauge that would eventually reach 0 and kill her. The most dangerous opponent in the entire Middle Stratum, it turned out, was the concept of being too impressive. She needed to reach the Upper Stratum before starvation became the plot twist. And she needed to find the pit. She found a pit, a massive shaft through the Middle Stratum. The instant she saw it, she felt something she'd only experienced twice before in this entire reincarnation, both times when she had sighted the Earth Dragon Araba and been confronted with her own profound smallness in the universe. Third time. 8 enormous eyes gleaming in the magma's glow. 8 legs so massive they bored holes into sheer rock walls, the way ordinary fingers press into sand. "Hello, Mother." A fire dragon approached from below, one size bigger than the worm she'd defeated. Wings, followed by an army of Middle Stratum monsters. Was this a territorial battle? An epic showdown? She gulped, watching from what she very much hoped was a safe distance. Mother, matter-of-factly, pointed her fangs at the fire dragon and its army. The world trembled. Not metaphorically. The actual ground shook hard enough to knock her off her feet from a safe spectator distance. When she got up, a freshly made crater where an entire army had been standing, not so much as a crumb remained. Mother descended back into the pit, apparently satisfied with the results. Okay, so Mother was a lower stratum monster who occasionally visited the upper stratum to lay eggs. The offspring of this creature that could erase an army with a casual fang point were small fry Taratects classified as small and lesser. This had to be one of the 7 wonders of the monster world. How does the most terrifying being in the labyrinth produce such garbage-level children? "O great mother, why couldst thou not pass even a fraction of that down?" The labyrinth would have been significantly easier. Though now that she thought about it, if all her siblings had equivalent power, the family feuds would have been extinction-level events. Maybe this was for the best. She stood frozen for a long time after Mother disappeared. Eventually, Fear Resistance LV7, LV8. Stealth LV8, LV9. Cool. Great. Wonderful. Priceless. 1 month into castle life, Schleyn had settled into a routine of training until his body gave out, sleeping and repeating. Officially, this was preparation to be the new hero. Unofficially, it was the only thing that stopped his thoughts from spiraling. Via Fartalk, he maintained a fragile lifeline to his friends. Yuri was called back to the church today. Most likely because they've heard about Julius's death. Right, since she's supposed to be the next saint. He'd also gotten the full battle report, and it was grim. 8 human fortresses attacked simultaneously. Half had fallen. Fort Kasorion, the most important defensive position on the front, destroyed by a Queen Taratect, a legendary class monster that had wiped out an entire army. Fort Okun had fallen to Anagrach's. The demon army released a single live, vengeful monkey inside the fortress. 1 soldier killed it. Thousands of Anagrachs arrived to avenge their fallen comrade. The fortress fell. The Anagrach horde then moved in and refused to leave, so at least the demons couldn't use it either. Only Fort Dazaro, under the command of Elder Ronant, said to be the strongest living human mage, achieved complete victory without catastrophic losses. And then there was the corner of the castle where Faye was, or rather, a large egg in a white shell, which was where Faye had been since the day Schlaine became the hero. Appraisal returned only worm egg. A scholar had told him she was probably alive inside, and to leave it alone. This had not eased his anxiety at all. None of his friends were here. His familiar was an egg. He was supposed to be preparing to be humanity's greatest hope. He ran laps until he stopped thinking. She put as much distance as possible between herself and the pit. Even if climbing through there was the fastest route to the upper stratum, absolutely not. She was scared of Mother, viscerally, physically terrified. And then, because her luck stat was what it was, Fire Dragon Rend, LV20, HP 1709 out of 3701. It surfaced from the magma lake on the far side of the pit. It was alive. It had survived Mother's attack. It was very, very angry. And it had locked onto her with the focused intent of a creature that had just been humiliated and needed something to take it out on. It was also faster than her. That was a first. She'd been outmatched in lots of ways before. Being outmatched in pure speed, with no escape route, was new. This was going to be a fight. She kicked parallel minds to maximum synchronization. Good news, it had leveled up right before this encounter, giving her 2 magic brains instead of 1. Without that, abyss magic would have been completely impossible. The universe had, in its warped way, timed this exactly right. Analysis. The dragon had superior stats, type advantage, she was weak to fire, and status condition resistance, meaning all her poison and paralysis skills would hit a wall of extraordinary defense. Against her, its HP was already nearly halved from Mother's attack, and its entire army had been wiped out. No command skill, pure one-on-one. Flame wrap engaged. It wasn't underestimating her. Good. She wasn't underestimating it either. Fireballs to test the water. Even the casual shots required her full evasion combo to dodge, thought acceleration, and foresight running hot. A tail whip grazed her and shaved HP from the mere heat. Poison shots evaporated before they could connect. Evil Eyes nibbled at its HP infinitesimally, and during the exchange, she watched status condition resistance tick up to level 2. Any remaining hope of paralysis, gone. The dragon leaped into the air. Inferno breath. The ground became a new magma lake. She jumped, synthesized a massive weak poison ball, hid inside, clung to the ceiling, and fled. She dropped into open air. The dragon was already there. She yanked a nearly invisible thread she'd pre-attached to the ceiling and simultaneously synthesized deadly spider poison with maximum paralysis. The dragon passed directly below her. Then it went into a tailspin, twisted mid-air, and narrowly avoided swallowing it. The bait-and-switch poison strategy that had dismantled half the Middle Stratum. Defeated. She landed, on ground surrounded by magma on all sides. The dragon had been strategically reshaping the magma flow the whole time to create exactly this situation. It wasn't just attacking, it had been playing chess. With fire. Another inferno breath. The flames engulfed her completely. That's what you think. The giant blob of deadly spider poison materialized above the fire dragon out of nowhere. She had never come down from the ceiling. She was still up there. Phantasm. Heretic magic level 6. Hallucination magic. She'd used the split second of the dragon's panic, when it had almost swallowed the poison bait, to cast the spell. Without that exact window of vulnerability, the dragon's imperial scales, combined with its resistance, would have dispelled heretic magic before it could take hold. To the fire dragon, she had dropped to the ground and burned to nothing. In reality, ceiling. Poison hit direct, broke through flame wrap, bit into the dragon's body. Immediate follow-up. Full power scythe swing, landing in the exact gap where the flames had been extinguished, deadly poison attack and rot attack in combination. The fire dragon roared and fell into the magma. Her HP was at 1, just 1. Only perseverance was holding her together. The rot attack blowback plus residual flame wrap damage had nearly done her in. The dragon was not dead. It surfaced. MP and SP essentially gone. It had converted everything to HP just to survive. Both of them could barely stand. The next blow would decide this. The dragon's final attack, a body slam. Simple, enormous, devastating. Against anyone else, the winning move. No MP, no SP needed, just mass and stats. against anyone else. She was a spider. She'd recently discovered something about utility thread that embarrassed her in retrospect, more than it probably should have embarrassed her, given how many other things had also nearly killed her. Utility thread had an effect called resistance conferment. She could add any of her resistance skills to the thread itself, including fire resistance. She'd had this ability for a while. She'd missed it completely. Even with fire resistance, the thread could only hold in the Middle Stratum's heat for a few seconds. That was all she needed. The thread stopped the dragon mid-charge. She swung her scythe with everything she had. Level up, level up, level up, level up. Dragon Slayer title acquired. Skills, Lifeblood LV1, Dragon Power LV1. Evasion and hit, both maxed, had each derived probability correction which merged into a single skill. Spatial maneuvering had evolved into dimensional maneuvering, allows the user to move freely through any space. She wasn't sure what that meant exactly. Possibly double jumps. She still couldn't believe it had survived Hellgate. Abyss Magic Level 1, her very first attempt at using it, had plunged the area into total darkness, swallowing even the magma's glow. When the darkness cleared, the terrain around her had sunk 15 feet in a 300-foot radius, with a hole at the center deep enough that a praise couldn't find the bottom. It was called Hellgate. It was not called that, ironically. The dragon had survived it by converting its last MP and SP to HP. Truly remarkable. She respected it, in the way one respects a force of nature immediately before it tries to kill you. Now, the magma was flooding into the new terrain depression she'd created. Body brain, we need to take the dragon and go. We're taking the whole corpse. After everything it took to beat it, it would be incredibly rude not to eat the thing. It ended up being a very close call. Hyrinx entered the room looking thinner than Schlain remembered. He bowed deeply before he'd said a word. Julius shouldn't have been the one to die. He held out a tattered red feather. A phoenix feather, temporary invincibility for whoever carried it. It had been meant for Julius. Julius had given it to him instead because Hyrinx was the tank, and the tank was statistically more likely to die in a direct exchange. I'm not going to die. Since you're our shield user, your chances of dying are much higher, right? So it's better if you take it, Hyrinx. Schlain's lips wobbled at the imitation of his brother's voice. He forced out the question. Tell me about my brother's last moments. Julius had gone out of the fortress to fight directly, refusing to stay inside while others died. He cut through elite demon soldiers before entering one-on-one combat with the enemy general. Strong general. Not strong enough. Julius won, then advised the remaining demon army to surrender. And that was when that thing showed up. A white girl, pure white from head to toe, walking across the battlefield as if taking a leisurely Sunday stroll, eyes closed, not concerned, not threatened, just strolling. That's the last thing I remember. When I woke up, all that remained of his friends were their clothing and equipment. The people themselves had simply disappeared. Rot attack. The attribute governing death. Direct contact. You become dust. Julius. The hero. Humanity's greatest. Dust. Hyrinx reached into his pocket, a pure white scarf. Their mother's last gift to Julius before she died. Schlain's vision blurred again. He remembered the first time he'd seen Julius. He'd been a baby, barely able to track movement. Julius had come to the nursery room with attendants, looked between Sue and him with tears streaming silently. The only time he'd ever seen Julius cry. He'd murmured something Schlain couldn't understand. He hadn't learned the language yet, patted their heads gently, and left. He still didn't know what Julius had said. Nice to meet you. I'm your big brother, Julius. I might not look it, but I'm the hero. That grade school-aged kid with the impossibly composed smile. Who smiled like that at that age? With my evasion skill, your snowballs will never hit me. Oof! Hey, Sue, that's not snow! I said no throwing rocks. A dream's a good thing to have. All you have to do is keep chasing your own goal. A world where everyone can laugh and live in peace. I'll keep chasing that ideal, even until the day I die. He had, apparently, kept that promise in the most literal possible sense. Shun, no, hero Schlain. Hyrinx's tone shifted. He sat up straight and met his eyes across the table, his expression resolute. I wasn't able to protect Julius. I'm a failure as a shield. But if you can settle for such a pathetic tank, please allow me to serve as the shield bearer for the new hero. I would be honored. Firm handshake. Schlane wasn't Julius and never would be. Half his motivation was obligation. But the other half was real. He couldn't abandon his brother's ideals just because he wasn't sure he was good enough to carry them. The white girl, high-ranking demon, possibly the demon lord herself, he would face her someday. He couldn't forgive her. Not for this. Elsewhere in the kingdom, the Rengsant Empire's head court mage was attempting to meditate and failing because his fool disciple had found him. Master, there's still post-war paperwork, and please stop radiating that much magic power. I am a mage, not a secretary. As the Empire's head court mage, you absolutely are also a secretary sometimes. The disciple lifted him, still cross-legged, and carried him away. No respect whatsoever for one's master. All my disciples are fools, Ronant muttered from his involuntary transport. The fool crying over paperwork, the fool who became a commanding officer despite having no motivation, the fool who never grasped magic, yet decided to act like an adult. Not one of you has surpassed me. You're the strongest mage in the world, Master. That's a tall order. The strongest human mage, perhaps. There are beings in this world that surpass me entirely. That Master, for example. He paused, thinking of the encounter 16 years ago that had humbled him completely and nearly killed him in the process. He was, paradoxically, grateful for it. Demons are just humans with a little extra hair. Both groups are equally unaware of how small they truly are. Several disciples had died in this battle, including the fool who had let the title of hero inflate his sense of his own capabilities beyond what they could support, who had charged toward a goal of saving the entire world with skills insufficient for the task. Saving something so large requires being willing to become, perhaps, a god. We can only protect what is directly in front of us. Fool disciples should never die before their master. His disciple, for once, said nothing. In a distant chamber, an administrator paused. A dragon's been destroyed in the great Elroe Labyrinth. Was this him? No, we have an unspoken truce. He wouldn't make a move without warning. But then what? He activated administrator's authority and read what was there. What in the world? A ruler? 3 of them. What does this mean? I've never heard of a skill called wisdom. Does that mean this is the work of D? But why? What is this skill? He turned it over and over. I guess I'll have to investigate. Back in the labyrinth, the spider lugged the enormous fire dragon corpse to higher ground before the magma could claim it. Was it inconvenient to transport a creature the size of a building? Yes. Was she going to not eat the thing after all of that? Absolutely not. Body brain, you know the drill. Descaling time. Woo! Lucky me.